We're a group of GenXers learning about our ADHD and neurodiversity later in life. Join us as we discuss interesting clips we find online and how they relate to our own life experiences. Welcome to This Is How My Brain Works.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of This Is How My Brain Works. For Krista, Michael, and Sarah, who's not with us today, I am Jason. And today's clip comes from Rich Pink. It's really a couple's discussion on what makes another one irate, what little things get to people. So let's take a look.
This is going to be good.
What are the things that give you the most rage?
Your loud chewing, loud breathing, people eating crisps on trains, people talking loud in restaurants, when wires get crossed, when simple technology doesn't work, when I haven't got phone signal, and when you interrupt me mid-hyperfocus. Must have periods in life when you are incredibly focused.
Yes, of course I do. But I can drop it, do something else quickly, and then come back to it. But, right, so I don't want to be mean, but part of your thing is if you have a question, then it needs answering immediately, doesn't it? So like the phone is a good example. I can message you and not hear back for 5 hours. But if you message me, if you don't get a reply
I think
immediately...
that you hate me. If I'm eating while you're eating, it doesn't cause me rage.
Right.
So it's, if we're having dinner together, I'll be fine. When it gets me is if I'm not eating and then it's...
Oh, that's great.
Oh.
So I think what's really interesting about this, and I believe that they are coming to this themselves, that through this journey, I believe that the husband, sorry, I'm going to forget his name. I remember Rox's name.
Rich.
Okay.
Richard.
That I think I think he's starting to realize that he's on the autism spectrum. And when they started this process, I don't think that he thought that. And every single time we bring this stuff in, I'm like, he's on spectrum. He's like me. He's just teetering. There's something there. And I think he's starting to realize that. So these conversations that we just saw are so prevalent in my house, which is split between autism and ADHD, right? Youngest kid, husband, ADHD. Oldest kid, me, on spectrum. And so youngest kid cannot eat with oldest kid because oldest kid makes too much sound for his mouth than the youngest kid. Like some of these things that they're talking about are ongoing conversations in our family. I need to tell you what I need to tell you right this second. And I told you I can't hear that right this second. That just happened to me yesterday. I was literally in a really important meeting and Greg was trying to show me something. And I off camera was like, I can't. Like, if I could stop this and do that, I would. And he still continued to try. And I was like, fuck, man, be an adult. I said, not right now.
Yeah.
And so these are things that are active on a daily basis in this neurodivergent household.
The impulsivity is real. It's almost like you don't know what to do with yourself, or you cannot physically move on until that thing gets pacified or answered or something. And it's like a physiological kind of like, oh my God, this needs to happen. To go do something else. It's like, I don't know what else to do. It's that strong of a pull to address it right now. So with the kids, I'll rather than try to get out of something conversationally, it's like it takes an abrupt switch track. I mean, you got to bring up something completely different so their brain locks onto a new type of thing, so they can not fixate on the thing anymore. So I'm wondering,
right.
like Greg, you could be like, weren't you supposed to fix the thing? Give him something else to
go mow the lawn. Why don't you go mow the lawn and get back to me?
Well, but the challenge is it's in the middle of a meeting. Like, I'm in a pitch meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm in an open, I've got one side of my office that's sort of open. It doesn't have a door. So people can sort of always sort of, like, and usually because I see them in my periphery, if I do not acknowledge you and I really lock in here, that is the signal that this is not the time.
Right.
And
so they're there.
Yeah.
They're there.
So
they know you're there. They know they're there.
Right. And then so when it gets sort of delivered, like the cell phone gets handed to me anyway, and then off camera, I've gotten really good. At, which is I'm doing this off camera, like fuck no, while I've got a smile on my face. That's what that is. Fuck no, go away. And then when that is ignored, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Right. And in the meantime, I'm trying to give a pitch and stay engaged with somebody else who, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so,
it's almost, you have to almost acknowledge the interruption and try to kind of integrate it in a kind of a funny way. And then where were we? Because otherwise for the viewer, it's awkward. It's like, oh my God, there's the kid and she's trying. And then you can't think about anything else other than what's happening to you in your world. So it has to be acknowledged in the middle of a pitch, which could be totally obviously.
Yeah. And it's not like, listen, to be fair, it's not like there's a sign that hangs in midair that goes, this is a pitch for a Fortune 500 company. Please don't be an asshole while mom's doing this. There isn't one there, but because there are different things. There are times where I can say, I'm so sorry, hold on 1 second, and I can deal, but not when there are certain meetings you can't, as we all know. There are certain times that you're doing something that you really need to.
My wife bought this, so the home office here does have a door, and she even bought this sign that says on air. She thought this will be cute. When this light is on, then you just can't come in the office. Does not with the kids. It barely works with me. Because it's like, oh God, is it an important call, or is she in the middle of her little pre-chat before the meeting? Because if it's pre-chat, I can still get this question in.
Oh my gosh. Write it down, Michael, and just wait.
Yeah. I am getting better with just doing a text. Because she's like, if she can address it now, she will. If not, just text it. But and I think the other thing is they're talking about, like, if she said, if we're eating together, then we're eating. But if I'm just watching you eat, because my wife also has this thing where it kind of like she's got this thing that kind of pops, pop, and I can't not hear the pop, pop, pop. And it's where it's all I hear, and I can't, like with the ADHD brain, we don't have the equalizer where we're like, let's bring this thing down to 2 and keep everything else up.
So you fixate on it.
Functioning level. It's like that thing goes even a little higher to where it's distracting even the stuff that you should be doing.
It's the extreme definition of once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. Or the other day, I was at my folks' house trying to get my dad's computer to work with the scanner, and they had a certain news program going on that is kind of like abrasive. It's kind of like sandpaper. It's like I can't. It was, and they listened to the TV at such a volume, but it was downstairs. So the TV was downstairs, I was upstairs, and I'm hearing the thing, and I'm like, I can't multitask right now. I can't go on and see, like, okay, you're using Microsoft and we need to get this driver for the printer. I could not. It was like, hey, that, like, that type of like input into my brain where I couldn't stay on a track. And I was just like, Mom, you got to put that on pause while I'm doing this, because I can't even think. Now, if a kid was in the background, one of my kids was in the background, maybe doing some stuff, I could kind of filter it out a little differently, maybe, or some other sounds I could maybe filter out a little differently. But it was the volume and the content itself that was creating some unease in my body, and I could not get, because I was having an emotional reaction. So this is now. So
you were having what she was talking about, which is ADHD rage. I mean, that's what she was saying.
Well, she was saying
it causes me rage.
Right. So the key here, I think, as you just said, that if it if it causes an emotional reaction,
Mhm.
like I'm not going to get emotional about maybe a whirring, AC or a coffee maker even, or something like that. It's just like, oh, that's some sort of harmless thing going on. And it's not really competing for anything, or I'm not really getting emotional about it. But so this content I was getting emotional about that. So I was going into I was starting to get, I was having an emotional reaction to something while I was trying to do something else. And when you start getting in an
Get
emotional
flooded.
state, yeah, you get flooded, dysregulated, and then you can't think straight.
So I have a question for both of you because I'm just intrigued by it. So I have this, I'll call it a superpower, that I could be 3 rooms away from you and not hear your conversation, but the moment I hear you say, I hear my name, I will know you're talking about me. I will hear the rest of the conversation. And like my mother used to go like, I'm just saying your name. Don't you come in here and start wondering, it's like I could pick out my name, and this idea that people are talking about me. I could be 3 rooms away and hear it and then go in the room and be like, what? You said my name. But I could have not heard the rest of the conversation. Are you guys, do you have that at all?
I don't need the name. I don't need someone to say my name. I'm usually thinking that they're probably talking about me.
Well,
You know what I mean? Without the name, they're like this. Why are they talking about me? I know they're talking.
Yeah, the ADHD brain and profile. Yeah, we are maybe like self-conscious enough to where we're like, they're talking about me. I know they're
like
talking
no matter
about me.
what.
We have that insecurity.
Why are they 3 rooms away whispering, or why are they 3 rooms away having this conversation where you've gotten 2 or 3 words from the conversation? You're like this. Oh yeah,
there's an insecurity because we have that insecurity issue.
Do you confront it, or do you just go, oh gosh, I feel bad, and I'm going to stand over here and I know they're talking? Because I go in the room and I'm like, what are you saying? If you're going to say my name, you may as well bring me into it. What's going on?
The ADHDer will sit there and feel bad and go into a rejection sensitivity and like go into their, and then it's like their little kid self is now driving, and we get pouty and we wait for them to be like, what's wrong? And we're like, you said something bad. We cannot do the adult self like you did. Like what's going on? What are you guys talking about? Like we go into this like little exile, ashamed part of ourselves, like little kid. And that's our reaction. So we get pouty. Until you can really fully understand, like, oh, okay, I'm going into this rejection sensitivity, or I'm going into this kid. Let me pull out of this thing. That's the work that you got to do to like kind of switch your mindset into a more.
Yes. And what ends up happening is if they came out of that room and they were like, all right, so we agree that we're going to get the pepperoni pizzas then, right? Hey, we were just discussing pizza tonight. Is that good? Then you're like, oh, they weren't talking about me. And then you've got to kind of figure out, why was I thinking that they were thinking about me, right? You're like, that's an issue.
Then you're beating yourself up over being self-conscious about.
Right, exactly. That it just kind of, the interesting thing you talk, Krista, about rage, a lot of things, I'm so quick to rage. Rage is I wish it wasn't the word I needed to use, but I don't know a different word.
My husband is the same, Jason.
I get up to a point.
You guys are besties. There's a bestie feeling, and I don't mean that I'm saying that lightly, but I would say my husband has that too. Like what you were just talking about. Like it's a very fast. He can be a fast burn and a fast putting it out. Like it,
Right. Yeah.
I haven't found that it takes me a little more time for it to die down. Like it really builds up. And I've tried over the last number of years through therapy, talking to my family about what and how they perceived my sort of losing it for no reason, for really no reason. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can regulate better and not go from 0 to 100 in a second.
Yeah.
And where my brain can settle down and where I can take a moment and not go to the worst extreme or, the most self-loathing position because I made a mistake, a simple mistake that really no one even cares about. But to me, it makes me look so, so it just goes to a point. And I don't have the ability sometimes to regulate my brain to say, hey, it's not going to mean a thing in 100 years, so don't worry about it. Secondly, there's nothing you can do about it, so don't get upset. I don't, we always talk about that person on your shoulder. That guy is like reading the newspaper in the bathroom while I'm going through this. Like, dude, let's go, get out of here.
Well, because I
need your help.
You're in your sympathetic, that guy's checked out.
You're in your lizard brain, not your wizard brain.
Your lizard. Oh, I haven't heard the lizard versus wizard brain. No, that's exactly it, Rudy. And here's the thing, like I would spend time. I would basically, when I was trying to do repair after something like this happened, like with me and Ginger, I was trying to do repair. Here's what I was going through. This was my experience. And I thought, well, once she hears what I was going through, she can then have some understanding and then sympathize, and then we'll be good. But that's not what happens, because what she experienced was someone was coming at them in an angry way, and that's unsettling. And so her nervous system is going through some things, and she needs to take some time to recover from that. So just hearing an explanation is like, that doesn't really do a ton.
Maybe not for her, but what about for you?
But that's the thing. I thought that like, once I explain this, then I'll be heard and understood. And then when this happens again, it's up to us.
We used to talk about that. We used to talk about that, my husband and I, like before we understood any of this about each other. So this was when we didn't have words to really talk about it. But I remember even when we were first dating, it was our first road trip, and he got flooded and something happened. And then he came back in a few minutes later, because again, he's pretty quick. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And whatever. He does the repair work, told me what was going on. And I just looked at him and I said, your anger is like a wave. And what has happened is you have let the wave pass through you, but you put it on me. And it may take longer to pass through me than it did for you.
That's a great
So
analogy.
you're just going to have to like let me process, and you're going to, and just like leave me alone for a little bit. It's all going to be fine.
Which is really hard for us to do, because we feel really bad about it. Yes. And now, and the fact that you're still affected by it, we feel horrible, and we're going to try to overcompensate, and we're not going to give you that space to recover, which we need to learn how to do. It's like, it's hard.
There's a lot of shame in going through those moments. There's just a lot of shame in letting yourself get to a point where you've like lost it. The anger and the rage inside is shameful. It's like, I lost it. It takes me a longer time. Like, I'm not as quick as Greg is, because I'm so sometimes, and it's pretty infrequent now, unless I'm in traffic. And that's the worst, because you're enclosed in a little car, right? And you're just like, but I just kind of try and breathe. Just people are so ridiculous on the streets. It's ridiculous these days.
But I also would say,
how about buy a license plate instead of these temporary 3-year-old? Anyway.
But also I would say that I think there is part of this that, and this is, I mean, listen, it's not fair to yell at people or get whatever. I get all that. However, I do think there is a level of, we are passionate artists. And, at some point, like I've told my kids a bajillion times, it's like, we love you. Dad and I will sometimes raise our voice. We do, we are passionate, but we are together. We're not, like, we love you. Like, we will always come and apologize, but I'm also not going to be 100% apologetic for not turning myself into a robot over time.
Right.
It's just not like, I create from this space. There's so much good that comes from this space. Right. And I know there's some bad that comes from it too, but I think sometimes when we're beating ourselves over the head over some of this stuff, I fear that we're sort of trying to make ourselves pasteurized milk.
I hear this,
You know?
for sure. I think ultimately, like, you and Greg have your own dynamic. Jason, Lisa, you have your dynamic.
Yeah.
Ginger and I have our dynamic. And I think it's just being mindful of each other's wiring.
Yeah.
And so I need to know that, like, that kind of reaction is going to have a different impact on someone with PTSD than it does someone who is on the spectrum, is neurotypical, whatever. And so while what you're saying is absolutely true, you can't lose yourself, and you can't turn yourself into a robot. We're emotional people, and that's just, like you said, like, a lot of great things come out of it. ADHDers are fun to hang out with, that's for sure. It's like, oh my God, let's go hang out with some ADHDers tonight. This party's gonna be awesome. And but, like, we also need to understand that, like, Jason, what you're talking about, that struggle of it's finding a pause, it before reacting. It seems almost impossible at times, but the more you start doing it, the easier it comes. But and I think I mentioned this in one of our other podcasts, was like, ironically, I, like, intellectually created a tool for myself that would help get me out of my brain. So it's like, instead of thinking my way through something, feel my way through something. When you're in an anxiety situation, you can rarely, like, just talk yourself through it. You almost have to kind of feel what's going on in your body. I'm tense. I'm going to relax my body a little bit. And then the temperature in the brain calms down when you focus in on your body and let your body relax a little bit, and turn it into, like, instead of, like, I got to think about the solution, just feel, what am I feeling right now? Let me just take a couple breaths.
I can do that. I can do that when I'm alone.
But when that happens, yeah, I understand.
When I'm alone, I'm good. Like, I'm good. I can handle. It's when my behavior goes to a point, like you were saying, Krista, I didn't know for a long time. I mean, for the last 10 years or so, I've known this, but I didn't know the impact of how my behavior, in sometimes a ridiculous manner long ago, how it went through every single person, how it affected every single person in a very deep and emotional way. So I can understand it goes, what happened on your road trip, and what he experienced went through you, right? So you experienced it too in a different way. And I just don't need and want to put that on people. It's because I'm understanding now it affects. And I don't know why I don't know why I get more enraged when I'm around people. Maybe it's, or when I'm around family, or if I make a mistake, or, like, just a lot of anxiety about messing.
There's lots of the
when I'm
waters
alone,
run deep, dude.
When I'm alone, that
family.
person on my shoulder. No, it does.
Yeah.
It does. You just don't want to be seen as someone, I don't know. I don't know. When I'm alone and things go wrong and it seems like I could go into a tailspin, I am. I can.
Well, but it's some level, it's like what I tell my kids so often, because we talk about, I've got kids heading into that peer pressure ages and whatever. And I think that we all forget that we are all the stars of the movies of our own lives, and literally nobody is thinking about you as much as you think.
Right.
I say that to my husband all the time. I'm like, no one cares about you as much as you're making it out to be. No one thinks about you as much as you say. No one, you're not coming up for them in, like, the middle of the night. You're not, like, we are all so, not that every human is a narcissist, but in some level, it's like we're all so consumed with just trying to get our own, 2 feet out of bed and make it work.
We want to be validated
Yeah, so so I'm just saying that like nobody cares as much about that stuff or notices or whatever. And I think once I truly really embraced that, it made me a lot freer freer from some of that self-loathing stuff. Like it's just nobody cares.
What I like about what you're saying, Krista, is like these are shifts in mindset that can be really, really powerful. When you can think about something in that way, like your example, and shift your mindset, your thoughts aren't the same. You're kind of putting it through a different filter or something, and it's not going to activate you as much. Or
Yes, exactly.
you
Exactly.
know, and
Well,
so
or
I
you have
think
to realize that everybody else is 2D while you think of yourself as 3D, for lack of a better word, right? Like that person came up, that person was a jerk, it was mean, it was bad, or whatever. They go away, now my 3D life moves forward, but that 2D, that like 2D person that was in my periphery for a minute goes away, And so when y'all with the ADHD can like really sit in that and spin in that, it makes me sad because it's like those people moved on.
well,
Maybe
that's
not the
where
ones that closest to you,
and
but
that's where the self-awareness for the ADHD, or the self-awareness, I think, reframe mindset, because your thoughts are going to become emotions. And so if we can like, well, how am I thinking about this? And if you can start that rewiring process, where you are going to you're going to reframe how you're going to experience things and how you're going to let things affect you. And there is a shift that happens, and it does become easier. You're still battling the same kind of, norepinephrine and lack of dopamine. I mean, those are things that you also have to figure out how you're going to move through. But as far as like the emotionality that we're talking about, there are some really effective tools, physiological tools. The whole like shake it off,
the
just shake it
shaking
off.
that we've talked about. Yeah.
That is weirdly effective. It actually helps you transition from something that is stressful to a new to turning the page. Now I'm moving on to this other
But
thing
also
now.
the thing, and I do it with my husband a lot because my husband can get stuck in stinking thinking. And so one of the things I do a lot is, well, what's the best, like I'll say, well, what's the best thing that you could make up? Because I still believe fully, man, that was a total transition in my life. One sentence. If you're going to make up the future anyway, why on earth would you make it bad? Make it up positive. And I literally had this moment where I was like, what? Right. Like I was like,
Everything is in slow motion.
future, yeah, it's like the future hasn't happened yet. So when I'm living in the wreckage of my future, which you guys have heard me say over and over again, why am I making it bad? Like, why not make
Protection,
it
we
delightful?
want to protect ourselves from, and our brain loves to fixate on something, and our
Drama.
ego wants to feel important and wants to be able to protect us from the dangers that are out there. And we
I know it's biological, like
create
our
those
biology does that.
But yeah, so like, and that is frustrating. We have to accept that that's that's a part of us, and we have to be grateful for that part of us, and not get self-shaming about it, or like,
Sure.
or pissed off at that part of us. We
No,
have to
and you know what
love
the
that
best
part of us.
therapy,
But
Michael, has been for that? The best therapy for me has been openly talking about a situation. That the best therapy and tool I have is openly talking about the situation. Like when I'm in the kitchen, and this never happened until we did the podcast. And I think I've mentioned it before. I finally, and a lot of the rage comes from the inability to express why I'm feeling this way, where the emotion comes from. Just it shows up and nobody knows why. I know why. This frustrated me. But until I really go through it, like I realized I don't want people in the kitchen when I'm cooking. I'm making dinner. And there was an incident where, and finally Lisa and I realized after a conversation, like, okay, she understands that when I'm in the kitchen making dinner, she doesn't need to be around me. It's better off if she's not, because I've got things going and I can't,
And
And-
yeah, and as we're getting older, I'm finding when that happens, I burn stuff, I miss a step, I do it, and then I get really mad.
Right.
I do. I'm the same as you, and I'm literally,
Right.
and I'll look at Greg and I'll be like, "Can you just leave?" Like, and
Right.
then it sounds mean, but
Yeah.
really it was because I just burned our dinner because we were
Well,
But
talking
so this
before,
is-
before we
politics.
didn't know. And
I
I
think-
was able to explain, like, this is what happens to me when there are a
Right.
lot of people in the kitchen and I've got something on the grill, I've got something in the oven, and the rice needs to be, whatever the case
Right.
is.
Yeah,
And I
and
was
whether
able to,
whether your partner like well, I can do it. Well, it's like, no, but it's hard for me. So ideally, we're talking about dynamics here, and ideally, like, you have a partner who's going to support that need. You've expressed a need. They should be able to acknowledge that need and help you with that. I mean, that's really what should happen. And that's a hard thing. Again, another hard thing for the ADHD, I think, is to like communicate what our needs are.
yes.
But like but you just gave an example of, I was able to do that in this case, and now my partner listened, acknowledged, and it's like, oh wow, okay.
I think
that-
we're all getting better about that. I think all of us across the board, even in just in doing this podcast, I think we're all getting so much better at talking to our partners about either what we're seeing in them or what we're feeling ourselves. I know Greg and I've had a wildly positive experience in how we function together, going from sort of like hacks to tolerate one another's weirdness to now really having conversations and understanding it, and making
supporting it.
choices to support each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's wildly different. We have to wrap
Yes.
this one up, you guys.
Okay, well, this another good clip, Rudy. You like, wrap it up. Okay, let's do it right now then.
Well, yeah, we don't have to like walk out, but we are at the end of our time.
Well,
Well,
that's what happens
yeah, that's what happens.
to the the ADHD brain, is like, oh, we're doing this now. Let's do it. Instead of like
Right.
more
Well.
subtle transition at, like, okay, let's
This
start.
this was not
Right.
a subtle
And
transition.
we run over to that bus and we hop on. We're like, okay, there's a bus. Go get
This
it.
is what we're doing now, guys.
Great, let's do it. Oh my goodness. Well, another
All
great
right.
episode of This Is How My Brain Works. For Krista and Michael, I am Jason. We'll see you next time.
Rage Against
Love the
Machine.
dismount. Love the dismount.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. For more info on today's clip, the hosts, and our podcast, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening.